Okay, let's just address it square on. So what is a Salesforce architect? Ezra, could you start us out with that?
Marge, you're soaking in it. Well, you're looking at 3 right now. But what I would say is basically anybody who's working on the admin side of Salesforce ought to start thinking of themselves as a Salesforce architect. I would say if you want a snazzy acronym, let's go with STAN. Let's go with start thinking architecturally now. We talked about this a bit during one of the previous sessions. The idea that certainly when you reach a certain size, you'll want to have someone whose specific job is architectural. But even if you're a solo practitioner administrator of a Salesforce instance, you want to think architecturally. Brian had the most fantastic line for it. It was something like going from thinking about the what to thinking about the how or the why. I've forgotten the phrase he used. He'll remind us in a moment.
I don't remember either, probably.
Oh, it was a great line. But in any case, yeah, the significant point is that you're moving from an order taker. I mean, ideally, you shouldn't be an order taker as an administrator, but you need to move to that strategic way of thinking. You need to know what's broken in your current org. You need to know what makes stuff break from your store of experience as a Salesforce architect, and you need to be helping move the org, your Salesforce org, in a more productive direction. Couple points along these. So yeah, I encourage you not only to start thinking architecturally, even if you really are strictly an administrator, stop and step back from all the requests you're getting. We're always, neck deep in this stuff. Actually, neck would be lucky. But pulling back and thinking about the why and starting to learn from other people's painful experience is going to benefit you so much. Start thinking about why are we doing this, and are there ways we can avoid pain that you might have experienced in your past. When it comes to flavors of architect, it occurred to me that you're looking at about 3 big dimensions of architect that I could think of. You would go from an architect that's more hands-on, basically an administrator or somebody who might be slinging some code in part of their time, to someone who's more hands-off, who's strictly in the managing or overseeing lines of work. So that's one element of how an architect may be. Either typically in a smaller organization, they'll be hands-on, and as you get larger, they'll be pulling away, being more hands-off and meeting with the folks who are actually making changes to the org. So that's one dimension upon which an architect might sit, hands-on versus hands-off. Second, their role inside of Salesforce. You would typically start with one person whose job it is to be architecting. And as you get sufficiently big, you're going to have multiple people who are going to be responsible for architecting clouds or silos or particular areas of your instance of Salesforce. The one that we're implementing in BigCommerce right now that I'm very excited for is that I've been asked to play the role of the chief architect. And so my job is to, crash together the heads of the other guys who are very knowledgeable, and in numerous cases, more knowledgeable than me about their given clouds, and help make sure that there's sufficient communication so that even though they have specialties, they don't feel too siloed. So that's the second dimension. First was hands-on versus hands-off. Second is what your architect's picture is with regard to other architects. Do you have just one architecting person, or do you go so diverse as to have an entire hierarchy of architects? And then 3, what's your interactions outside of Salesforce? Are there architect-like roles with the systems in your organization beyond Salesforce? And so what are your interactions with those people? I've seen plenty of companies where Salesforce is really the big kahuna. It's what they spend most of their time and money on. And so the Salesforce architect needs to be helping implement discipline in other parts of the organization that don't have as sophisticated a systems picture yet. Or you can go to the far other extreme where they've got databases, they've got ERP, they've got all sorts of stuff going up and down. And Salesforce is actually in the job of trying to catch up and be as mature as those other systems. So I would say when it comes to the flavors of architect, you're dealing with those three distinct dimensions: hands-on versus hands-off, what kind of a role they play inside of Salesforce with regard to other architects, and what kind of a role they play outside of Salesforce in interacting with folks who own other systems, who may or may not be architects. Oh, sure.
Oh, I was just going to say that, I mean, thank you so much. That's really, did you want to add more?
The one other big one I was going to get to was the question of, okay, well, what distinguish fundamentally, what can an architect do that an admin can't? And what I'd say is that an architect has to have scars. It just, if you don't have the painful practical experience of having seen other instances of Salesforce, of having gone through the pain of implementing not as well as you could have, I would be really hard pressed to see that person as a genuine architect. An admin, I mean, certainly, you know, everyone benefits from experience, but I really do think that an architect must have experience if they're going to put that on their business card.
Regret and trauma is what you're saying.
Amber, would you like to take a crack at the same question?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said, Ezra. I think, you know, it's interesting. I'm coming at this role from a non-technical, well, a quasi-technical background. I'm an accidental admin. I was running a call center when I fell into the Salesforce universe. So, I passed the platform developer one exam by the skin of my teeth. I'm not a coder. I don't want to be a coder. That's not where my heart lies. But designing systems and working on governance and making sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, those are all architecture things, kind of whether they're labeled that or not. To your point about, are you an admin or are you an architect, and where's that line? It's scars. I was a Salesforce consultant for 6 years. I've seen some stuff, y'all. I've done some stuff I'm not necessarily proud of. And if I could do it again, I would do it different. But I agree 110%.
And I like the way you phrased the stand, the stand. I was coaching my son's soccer team, and the first day of practice, we myself and the other coach, asked everybody, who here plays defense? And nobody raised their hand because nobody wants to play defense. There's no glory in playing defense. But the answer was everybody plays defense all of the time, right? And I like everybody's it doesn't matter where everybody's an architect, right? In some way, shape, or form, thinking about how to future-proof what they're building and what they're doing. It's not just providing that oversight and governance. It's really thinking differently about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
All right, so we have to address the question about certifications. And what's so interesting is, Salesforce rolled out the certified technical architect. Then we were given the application architect and the solution systems architect. And now we have the B2C solution architect, B2C commerce architect, Heroku architecture designer. There's a brand new one that isn't fully public about the B2B solution architect. So it's very exciting. And then Salesforce internally has something called an enterprise architect designation that employees can get. Is certification meaningful for folks down this path? Just throwing it out there, anyone who'd like to answer.
If I'm interviewing or if I'm interviewing for technical roles, certifications are as valuable as maybe they are hard to get, I guess. If it's easy to get and anybody can get it, then it's probably not that valuable. It doesn't matter. Salesforce Architect scenarios or badges are fairly hard to get. I think they're not easy, and so they have value there. They provide people with an understanding that, hey, I've got this base level of competence in what it is you're going to be asking me to do. But I think to what Ezra and Amber were saying earlier, that's only part of it. The experience, the scars, the trauma, the PTSD, all the stuff that sort of comes along with that. That's the experience is always more important as far as I'm concerned. But it does matter. It matters. I think Salesforce certifications matter.
As a hiring manager, it's a door opener, but it's not a given. Right? Do I filter by that? Probably, even subconsciously, but it's not, it's not a given. If you come in and you can't tell me the difference between a, master detail and a lookup relationship, we're done here. So it's about, being able to articulate that experience.
Sure. How about for you, Ezra?
Yeah, I've become something of a certification skeptic myself. I generally say there are two certifications I care about. One is the administrator cert, and then the other is the certified technical architect. Because that certified technical architect, that's work, kids. Is it still $6,000 to get? Is it still standing in front of a murder board for 3 hours?
Yes, and yes.
Yeah, so
yeah, it's a big deal. I'm glad. I'm really glad. So for us as a consulting shop, certs are important, and this demonstrates a level of expertise and a depth. I'm thinking of things like the Experience Cloud cert or some of these others that you need to know a fair amount in order to go achieve that. I'm glad that Salesforce has mixed it up and provided this path, not only for folks to have next career steps, but then also to have areas of specialization, and just to acknowledge that not everyone's going to be a CTA, not everyone's going to write code, but there is a real role for folks as architects in these very specific areas.